Hello and welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We are so happy to have you with us. Want to welcome my co-host, Dr. Ricardo Whyte.
Thank
Um,
you for having me.
it's good to see you. Glad that
Thank
we're
you.
here. We weren't here last week, but we're happy to be back.
Welcome back from your vacation.
Yes, thank you. A well-needed vacation. Well-needed vacation. But we are happy to be here tonight. We are going to be doing part two. We've been talking about singles 2 weeks ago. We were talking about singles. But before we jump into that, we want to know where you guys are watching from. Please put in the chat where you're viewing from. We'd love to see. I know Clint was one of the first ones that logged on. Clint is our faithful Mental Health Monday viewer. So welcome, Clint, always. And I think Clint is,
Appreciate you, Clint.
and I
So,
think Clint is from Texas. See, Clint, I memorized that because you're here so much.
Clint, soon as we get some merchandise, we're gonna send you over something.
Yes, yes. He needs a Mental Health Monday t-shirt for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. Um,
Anybody else
ah,
want to tell us where you
San
are from?
Diego.
Look at that, right in my little
Yes, Miss
hometown. We like the
Jerry
sound of
from
that.
San Diego. I know Jerry. Hi, welcome, Jerry. So nice to have you this evening. We have Panama City, Florida. Lovely Belinda. Welcome. Welcome. Very happy that you are here with us. So yes, I know we jumped on a little bit later than planned. We also have Alexis from Tennessee.
Nice.
Welcome, Alexis.
Welcome, Alexa.
Welcome, welcome. Please be thinking of your questions. Hopefully, you guys were thinking of them for the last 2 weeks, but definitely tonight, if you're just tuning in for the first time, definitely be thinking of your questions. Um, yeah, I also was telling Dr. Whyte off the air that there was another tragedy today that happened in our country, and it's happening so often, and it does impact. Mental health is being talked about again, but there was another another mass shooting in Louisville, Kentucky, and I just want to say my condolences to the family and how horrible and senseless this is, because there are 4 families that have lost loved ones and 9 were injured, and they're in critical condition, so we don't really know what that number is going to really look like, but they are all impacted by this shooter's decision. And it was so horrible because it was horrible because it's horrible, but also it was live on Instagram. And he called his friend before he did it, and he said, "I'm about to shoot up everybody in the bank and kill myself because I'm suicidal."
Wow.
Um, and
Wow.
that, we just have such a problem in our country. I feel you don't hear this happening in other places. And so we as Americans, we just can't just bury our heads and say, like, we kind of, like, I know, like Amber even said, like, she saw it across her screen, the news come across her screen. I was really busy at work today, and I think something popped up, and I think you said it might have crossed your screen as well. But we get so used to this news, which is so sad. I mean, we just had the shooting in Tennessee 2 weeks ago. I think it was a Monday as well. I think it was a Monday as well. So I think it's exactly 2 weeks.
It's like we don't even get a chance to, like, calm down and absorb what happened before you're hit with yet another one.
And it's so traumatizing.
I'm sure you can recall the Bible text, "The heart of many shall wax cold."
Yes.
It's just happening so often.
It's happening.
And a lot of times we think about those that pass away and we understand the tragedy of passing away, but it's easy to not recognize how life-changing the injuries can be. So even when you survive, so much can be taken from you.
Right.
And especially if you don't make a really hardcore resolve that, you know what, I'm going to push myself to get back to where I was. But even when you survive it, there can be so many challenges. So our hearts really go out to all involved, and yeah, we just sincerely look forward to the day when this will be behind us. And,
Right. Right. When Jesus
yeah,
comes.
absolutely.
When Jesus
Absolutely.
comes. I just want to say this, and this is my own personal opinion. This is not the opinion of everybody with Living Manna Church, which Mental Health Mondays is sponsored by them, is by the church. But I just really feel that mental health checks should be a part of owning a gun. Because every time we see this mass shooting, and of course, it would take a mentally ill person or someone struggling with their mental health to do something like that. And there are countries, I think of Japan, which I mentioned before, but that has a very, well, at least I think 30 days, they go through a 30-day process of having to talk to a mental health professional before they can purchase a gun. And you don't hear of these incidents in places like Japan or really anywhere. America is unique to this type of killing in these type of situations. And so I don't know, we just can't continue to bury our head because one day it could be one of our family members just walking into a bank. I mean, how many of us just get up and go to the bank and just want to make a deposit or take money out, and you don't think that you're actually could possibly be risking your life?
Yeah, loss is loss. So hopefully we wouldn't wait until it touched us.
Right.
It might not even be just touching your family. It could be you yourself. So
Yes,
hopefully we wouldn't
that's
wait for
true.
that.
That's true.
To really motivate ourselves to say, man, how do we put our brains together to solve this issue?
Right.
One of the great things about us as humans is we figure it out.
Right.
We have the ability to figure it out. So what do we need to do to really try to address this issue so we have a safer world? Especially when there are others that have figured it out. So
Yeah.
what can we do?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's just the world we're living in. But yes, but tonight just wanted to mention those things. We didn't want to just gloss over and act like we aren't all living in the world. I mean, this is live it happened today, just, several hours ago. And so this is a real thing that um, people are dealing with, and their mental health is affected. Every time there's another shooting, and we are going to get off of this topic in a minute because we're talking about singles, but every time there's another mass shooting, it definitely traumatizes us, or because it's
We weren't made for loss.
no.
We weren't made for loss, and we can't help but experience, we can't help but experience the tragedy,
Right.
because we are all connected. I think one day when when high level science is going to show us that we're more connected than we think,
Oh yeah.
so that our outcomes are unified in a common garment, as Martin
Yeah.
Luther King alluded to.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, believe it or not, this is not our topic for tonight. Our topic tonight,
It's
or
dating.
this evening is about singles, the single questions about being single, being a Christian, being single, not being a Christian, being single. I mean, questions about the single life, the challenges, the blessings. Some people decide to be single, and that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that, right? I
Were
mean,
there were there any questions that kind of stood out to you last week that you're like, hey, that was a
two
great
weeks
question?
ago.
Yeah,
Mm.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
2 weeks ago, yeah, I don't remember nothing, but I know you're saying stood out to me. Well,
And
just really that, because somebody made a comment about that they're just they have made the decision to be single and they're very, very happy. And so
mhm,
that's kind of why I said, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if that's what makes them happy.
yeah,
Yeah, God definitely created, you know, man, woman to be together and to complete each other, really. But that doesn't mean you have to be together.
right.
You can be happy by yourself too. You can be happy by yourself.
No, well said. Well said.
All
Yeah,
right.
okay, so Amra, what is the difference between dating and courting, and why
Ooh.
is that important? What is the difference between dating and courting? You want to take the first
I
stab at
was
it?
I was just gonna say, I'm pointing to you
Oh,
because
okay. I mean,
no, because I'll say what I have to say, which is just honestly, I maybe you don't know because I really don't. And I've raised 4 kids and I still don't know. Like, is it to some people? I know in religious circles, some people call it courting and not dating. Maybe in some religious circles, people they consider courting um, more traditional and not. It doesn't look kind of like how the world dates. I don't know. Like I feel like that definition is fluid for every different person for every person. But what if you have a definitive answer? I'd like to hear it.
I do actually.
Okay,
Let me
educate us all.
I want output. I want AirPods. Okay. All right. So can you hear me?
Hmm.
Yes. Can you
Yes,
talk?
yes, I can hear you. Can you? Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear
Okay. I
you.
can't hear you. So I
Oh, you
better
can hear us. Okay.
turn this around.
All right. The person that, while you're doing that, the person that asked the question is saying her husband, Terry,
All right. How about now? How about
we,
now?
we can hear you, said he was courting for marriage and that he didn't date. And I would like to hear his definition of that. Meaning but so basically,
Okay.
courting and
I
dating.
might just
I
have to
mean, I've
do.
heard it in people identify it by dating, by courting, but the characteristics um, are the same. So
Okay.
if they were, but I'm going to hear what Dr. Whyte says. But basically, what I believe that your husband Terry was saying, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, and Dr. Whyte can correct me if I'm wrong, is that he was dating with the intention. This was an intentional thing of getting married. So I guess people think that you can't date without being intentional. Like I just think I think the characteristics of what some people say courting is should be in dating, but you can still call it dating. Like you should always be intentional about your dating. Like you shouldn't just be dating to date. Like if this person is not marriage material, don't waste your time. But go ahead, Dr. White.
Let's see. Jamie said, I was told dating is like taste testing, courting is settling on a meal. I love it. Um, no, yeah, but for me, dating sounds a little bit more like you're dealing with a buffet. It's like dating is more, you're still exploring. But then with courting, it's more, okay, I've zeroed in on this person and we are making moves towards marriage. Like that's the process that we're going through.
Right.
So it seems a bit more connected to marriage. I like what you're saying. I don't see why I would date somebody who I'm like, I have no chance whatsoever of getting with you.
Right.
But let's just like date. And even when you're talking about dating, is it just go out on a date or is it going steady?
See,
Um,
all this
so
terminology is just I mean, what you're saying about courtship is what it should always be, no matter if you call it dating, call it courtship, call it going steady. I just feel like for every generation, they have their term. And I just think courtship sounds a little old fashioned. Like if you're talking
yes.
to the young people of today, you could never just walk and be like, oh, so are you courting these young ladies or these young men? You can't say
Well,
that.
and I think you really should only be courting one person. I think,
Right.
I
But
think you can, but I would say, I just said, hey, why would you date a person that you're not necessarily going to marry? Because I think you have to practice a little bit, and I'm talking about non-sexual dating. So
right, right,
let's just get that out the way. In that case, like there's some people who are like, well, if I don't like the person, I'm not gonna, go out with them, let's say. You do need to practice because you can get super nervous and you do need to develop the skill of getting comfortable talking and being interesting and practicing being interested
right.
and also getting comfortable looking past maybe initial appearances. So those are good things to practice, and then
Mhm.
it'll obviously also prepare you for now when you really are excited about the person. You learn how to cool your jet because that's a turnoff.
And
You know,
sometimes with dating or I don't whatever
courtship.
dating, courtship, whatever. I know the word.
Yeah.
Like when you said you need a little practice, meaning like you almost like when I met my husband, I didn't date a lot of men. I mean, I don't know that's, but I dated a few.
Right. Right.
So when I met him, it helped me to know what I wanted, what I was looking for. I knew what I was looking for because I knew what I didn't want. Because I got to know some other people, let's say it that way. Because I wasn't
Right.
dating everybody, but I got to know different people. And there's different characteristics that I was like, yeah, I definitely don't want that. Or I don't personally click with that. And so when
Right.
I met him, it just was like, okay, this
Gelled.
felt perfect for us,
Yeah.
for
Yeah, yeah.
that
No,
type of
that's awesome. I think the other nice thing about that is that you're not looking saying, hey, I wish I would have, like you feel like you got cheated out of the experience of, hey, because and I think that's important, as well. But yeah, any more questions? Let's
Right. Yeah,
see.
we're taking your
Yeah.
questions on being single, the single life. All right. And so please put in the chat your
Is,
questions.
look at this, Amra. Is it wise to pursue a relationship with someone who has been divorced more than once? Um, Tante, these kind of questions really like highlight the importance of your system and
Mm,
the importance of having a criteria and a process for
mm,
how you're going to make your decisions. Because rather than a rule, imagine if your child looks back when they're about to drive out of the driveway and they're like, "Hey, how much should I turn the wheel?" And I think I might have
right,
used that illustration before. I can't tell you how much to turn the wheel. I can give you the guidelines.
right,
So I think it's a matter of guidelines with regard to, okay, what is the criteria for the person that I'm looking for? Do they communicate well?
right.
Can they handle their responsibilities? Do they really care about me? There are mitigating circumstances. Maybe the person got divorced because, I don't know, people kept cheating on them or something like that.
Right. Like
You
you can't
know,
make a
so
blanket statement like you've been married 2 times or 3 times, so that you
so
must.
it's done, you know.
And I do think that, but I also, with that said, I still think that if somebody's been married 2, 3 times, I mean, you want
There's
to
a
ask.
flag.
There's a flag. Like you want to ask questions, like tell me about your
What
marriages.
happened?
Yeah, what happened? Your marriages. You definitely want to do your proper research, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
My favorite question
and
for this is, if you had to put your finger on it, why do you think the marriage failed? If you had to put your finger on it.
right.
And the beauty of questions is it really gives the person an opportunity.
To,
Well, now you're going to see if they say, well, it was all the other person's fault.
exactly.
That's a red flag.
Or what did you learn coming out of each marriage and how did it change you? Like, what would you do differently? How have you grown as a person? And if they don't really have
Absolutely.
too much to say, then no.
Right. Now you're like, okay, concerned. And
Right.
and uh and if you're seeing patterns as to all the divorces have that thing in common where they're not growing, or what have you.
And
So
definitely, I mean, I believe in premarital counseling anyway, or pre-engage, yeah, premarital pre-engagement counseling. But definitely if somebody is, I believe with it for anybody, but when somebody has been married before, you definitely want to, it's not an option. It's really not an option for any couple, really good premarital engagement counseling.
well, the data suggests that, if it's a 50% failure rate for the first marriage, it's like a 70% failure rate for the second, and on up and up. So with there being higher stakes, it makes sense to get the additional counseling.
Right. Right.
Next, is there a rule regarding age difference?
There's not a rule that, well, there's not a rule that I know of, even though people say it's dangerous to, not dangerous, but it can be tricky to marry somebody more than 10 years older than you, that can be like just generationally, there's just, you were raised in a different time, so different, you just
Well,
have different
incompatibility, you're
value.
looking
Yeah,
at
you're just not compatible, just different, those type of things. But there's no set rule. I mean, I can tell you that my mom, my stepfather, who passed away, God bless his soul, but they were 10 years apart. And nobody
hmm
could tell because my mom looks really young, but she's older. She's 10 years older. But they had the best marriage. Best,
Yeah,
best, best
yeah.
marriage. I can say the only thing that I could see that maybe they struggled with was just the fact that he had never been married before and he never had children. But he
hmm
was great to my children. So he really wasn't a selfish person. He really wasn't. But he did have to learn how to share a space with someone because he had never been married before. So moving, in
Right.
with my mom was like, that was different. But
I think I
there's
think
no
you're
rule.
I think one of the biggest priorities after the basics, after, hey, how are the bills being taken care of and living and working, and after the big things, it's like friendship,
Right.
friendship. It's like that is such of a big deal. Do you enjoy being together? Like,
Right.
it does, if you're 50 years apart, but the bottom line is, are you friends? Do you enjoy one another's company? I think those are some important questions. I think there are little things like, obviously, if a person is 20 years older, well, how easily are they going to immerse into one another's friend group? And
Right.
obviously, it's like if you're raising children, these are some of the factors. But I'm just talking about what are some of the fundamental things. It's, are you friends? Do
And
you get along? Do
right.
you, and long term?
And we say all this, and I'm going to throw, I'm going to be devil's advocate to you and to me, and we have to answer honestly. So we both have the same age children. Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
the same age children, and so they're 19, 20. I'm thinking of our ones that are sophomores in
Right,
college.
right, right, right.
So they become really good friends with. We just said what we said, and we answered the question. But what if like an older person, like in their late 30s, wanted to become friends with your daughter or my daughter, but they were good
This
friends?
is
Would we say the same answer to that?
this is where I'm very pro the gun laws. This is where I'm very pro the gun laws. Oh my goodness. I have the right to bear arms. No, I'm
Yeah,
just playing. I'm just
me
playing.
personally, I personally would have an issue just because a 40-year-old and my 19, almost 20-year-old
What
are
do they have in common? What do they have in
exactly. They're in a
common?
completely different space. That just doesn't make
What
any
do they
sense.
have in
But
common?
I'm sure the person asking the
Because
question wasn't asking for that type of
because here's the thing. Again, I like fundamentals. The big concern is power differentials.
right,
Power differentials. Always be leery of people trying to amass huge power differentials, because what you see when you get massive power differential is you see abuse.
right,
Like, it is very few people that can deal with having a lot of power and not drifting over to abuse.
right,
So you get people, hey, let me pull you away. Let me get you isolated. Let me get you to where you're not making any money whatsoever. I have all the money. I'm controlling the money. We're away from your family. We're away from your friends. Wait, what? You're getting a massive power differential. And
hmm,
with those kind of power differentials, you get abuse. I'm not saying it always happens, but it's
right,
just a rare person that can really and truly handle power like that and continue to make sure it's fair. So
right.
this is why I hesitate to say, okay, you're going to have this huge gap in age, huge gap in maturity, huge gap in resources, and
Huge.
not expect that there might not be issues that come from that.
Yeah.
So that those would be my concerns.
We wouldn't, basically he's saying we wouldn't have it. He wouldn't have
I
it.
wouldn't be down with that.
I
Wouldn't be
wouldn't
down
have
with that. Wouldn't
it.
be down with that.
You
Wouldn't
wouldn't be
wouldn't
down with
yeah,
it.
wouldn't be down with that.
This is a good question that Clint has. He says, is there such a thing as being too picky choosing a partner? And if so, what's the limit? Perhaps it's
It's
situational.
situational. Yeah, this is where again you go back to the whole being formulaic, like
Mhm.
taking some time to really think about what is my process? What is my process? Because that's what's going to protect you from being too picky and being
Right.
random. It's okay, what is my basis? Is religious congruence important? What, where is that friendship element?
Mhm.
Where the finances, how has that been worked out? Where are we living? Has that been worked out?
Right.
Yeah, so I think you clarify the criteria. Understand, what does it take to have a happy, um, is that better? That's better. It's less, I don't know what you did. Just moving that, there's less echo.
Oh, there echo before? I didn't know. No, it was
It's
just the mouse. I just moved the mouse from right there to
a
right there.
little bit. But
Okay.
anyway, yeah, but just thinking through what your criteria is going to be, I think can be super, super help.
Right.
And then you can have confidence that you're not being too picky because you've
Mhm.
taken the time to think it through.
Yes. And I think I just want to say this is that I don't know. I mean, I guess there you can be too picky, but I think that you shouldn't settle, right? Don't, you should make sure that you if there's something that just doesn't fit with you, or definitely if it's a true red flag, that you definitely shouldn't settle. And so some people may think that's being too picky, but you're just waiting for the person that just really meshes with you. And I think that's
We're
okay too.
we're not talking about a handbag or a hairstyle here. We're talking about a life partner. And yeah, this is going to probably be the most important decision that you make in your life. Um, yeah, barring the career that you choose, the person that you choose as a spouse, this is probably going to be the most important decision that you make. So it's going to be hard to be a little too picky. Now, obviously, anything is possible. There's standards that maybe nobody can meet. But yeah, I think it's reasonable to understand that this is a very, very important decision. All right. And I would agree that with age difference, as you grow older, it becomes less and less relevant. But especially while you're younger, it's a more exaggerated thing. Amra, yeah, so I would agree with you, Amra. What are some good leading questions to ask on a first date? That's a fantastic question, Amra. Amra, I can tell that we would enjoy having like a Sabbath fellowship dinner with you and Terry. That would just be so much fun. So we got to make that happen at some point. That's a great question. What are some good leading questions to ask on a first date? I think on a first date, one of the things to realize is that people's favorite topic is themselves. So it's a good idea to really kind of get at what they're passionate, what they enjoy talking about. So, hey, where are you now? What are you doing for yourself? And then where do you hope to be in 5 to 10 years? Um, let's see, questions, what do you enjoy doing? And why? And who are you? Where are you from? What are some of the key things that define who you are? What were you about to say,
Well,
sis?
it reminds me of, I heard this sermon one time. It was hilarious actually, but I won't even say the name of the pastor, but he said you need to have like a list of questions and like a resume and ask them. They're like, is you like, how is your credit? Like, what? How do you actually get mad? Like, do you do you throw things? Do you yell? I mean, he was being a little kind of funny, but you really want
Right.
to know them. Like, don't waste these opportunities to at least ask. You should really have your questions ready, and then spend some time to see how their answers are, and spend some time to get to know them for yourself. But definitely have the questions ready.
Look, as a father, this is advice I would give my daughter, right? And that is, look, when it comes to men, this might be true for women as well. Um, it's not what they say, it's
Mm,
what they do.
true.
Okay? It's not what they say, because the only problem with like great questions and great responses is the behavior still needs to measure up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So please, like I have a workshop um called Don't Say a Word. Don't say a word. And it's about dating. It's about dating. Don't say a word. Like, you should get clear on what you need to look for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and be careful with that, asking people to give you their script. Be careful with that, because people can talk a good game,
Yes, they can.
as especially when they're motivated with sexual intentions.
Oh yeah.
It's like they can talk a wonderful game, and you would be so shocked to see how much they change after they've met their objective. So
Mm.
that, yeah, I
Mercy.
mean, these are the facts. These are the facts, and this is why a lot, like, I think women will fall subject to that. They'll fall subject to a person who knows how to say the right things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the things you might want to hear, when in fact they're not going to actually live that.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually they're playing a game. So learn what it is to read, what it is to look for. And then the other thing that you want to be aware of is your desires can betray your ability to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Your desires can betray your ability to hear.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to hear something you don't want to hear.
Right.
Okay? If a person's not interested, for example, and you think that you can ask them, hey, are you interested in me? Because you sure are not acting. You need to pause at that point and say, wait a second.
Right.
Their behaviors are saying what their mouth might not be able to.
Mhm.
They're not prioritizing me. They're not,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
Um, what were you gonna say, sis?
I mean, just you saying all that you're saying just really took me to a place. This is not a question that someone's asked, but I think we should throw it out there anyways, because I mean, we're kind of, I don't want to say we're dancing around it, but I mean, it's a real thing, right? So if you're single and you're dating, I mean, the sex question, right? When you are single and you're dating someone and you start to make those connections intimately, that intimacy happens and it happens throughout the relationship. I mean, you're making, I think I talked about this before on here, is that God created sex for us for the marital relationship so we could be connected, and it can keep
Bonded.
the because in marriages we have issues, and it keeps that bond, it keeps you connected. And so when you're dating someone, and this is not your forever person, or you're not married, you're making those same connections that you're supposed to be making with your forever person. And then your judgment gets skewed. It can get very skewed
Well said.
when you need
Well
to,
said.
make decisions or maybe get out of the relationship. And so
There,
go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, there are two hormones. There are two hormones. Oxytocin. Oxytocin is the trust chemical. So imagine there's a chemical release with sexual activity that literally makes you want to trust the person.
Right.
And then the other chemical is dopamine, a neurotransmitter called dopamine, which promotes addiction. Okay. It promotes you being addicted to the person.
Yeah.
So imagine those two chemicals being released. They're wonderful when you're married
They're wonderful.
because
You need to be addicted
because
to your husband and
you
wife.
you need to be, but it's like they work together to make a reset,
Right.
where
Right.
it's like you're like, what were we arguing about again? I
Exactly.
can I can barely remember. Oh, what's the point? That's not that big of a deal. But when
What
you
I tell my,
bind yourself,
go ahead.
well, when you bind yourself to someone that's toxic, this is not a good idea. What were you gonna say?
I was just going to say, in marriage, God can use sex to reset. I call it makeup sex because it literally reconnects you after you've had like
An
this
argument. Yeah.
or argument, or just not seeing eye to eye, and that argument kind of separated you. That helps to bring you back together, and that's what keeps you connected. I mean, I know we're not talking about
Absolutely.
marriage, but it's important for singles because, of course, you're tempted to just make those type of marital connections. And it is, I mean, God has a plan for his plan, is specific, and it's for a reason. Because when you're dating, again, your decision making can become confused or blurred. And so even when you're having a glaring red flag in front of your face, if you're sexually intimate with this person, sometimes that flag looks like white, like it's perfectly fine, like you just don't see the red flag as a red flag, or you don't have the emotional power to acknowledge that flag and have the power to get out of the relationship.
This is sort of off the theme of what we're talking about. Ava, you said very brilliantly, actions speak louder than words unless they're acting, right? Now, this is the part that speaks to the importance of longevity. Okay? Because you're correct. You're correct. People can get they can deliver Oscar winning performances. Again, with certain motivations, and
Mhm.
that's the power of time. This
Yeah.
is why when the dating process is rushed, what you don't see is time unveil the real character, you know and with time, at some point you guys may end up traveling or something like that together. It's cool to see what happens how a person behaves under stress, how a
Right.
person behaves with the unexpected, how a person deals with you showing up late,
Right.
and what rage look like. These are questions you need to know. You need to know.
Mhm.
But they often will occur over time.
Yeah.
And when people compress that period, when they compress it, sometimes they miss the advantage of it. So that's what helps with acting is if you give it sufficient time. Saying that you should date/court with the intention to marry. Well, maybe that's what Sister Atonte said. Is that what you said, Sister Atonte?
Um, no, I do believe that you should date court with the intentions of marriage, but before you, I guess, officially are dating, courting officially, you need to learn more about this person. And even if you do get into a dating, courting relationship and you see red flags, and even though you may have seen things that you think like, okay, this is marriage material, so you keep moving forward. But when you see a red flag or experience something that you're like, you know what, I don't, there's something in this person's character that is not what I'm looking for, that's not glorifying to God if you're a Christian, or it's just won't work with you, then you definitely should step away. And again, we were talking about, if you're in that sexual relationship with this person, it's harder to step away at that time. But yeah, you should have the intention of um,
I
marriage.
think I think we would agree that there is a data gathering part where sometimes, as you said earlier, Sister Tante, it's like I wasn't necessarily going to end up with the person, but I was learning. I was learning that I like this,
Right.
I don't like this. I know that this is not congruent with my ultimate goal. So there's a data gathering part. But I would say to plunge into a relationship with a person who you're clear this is not the person, that can seem kind of dangerous. That to me personally,
Mhm.
especially because one of the consequences of dating, especially, is sometimes children. And children bind you to a person a long time, for a
Oh,
long
yeah.
time. And so these are reasons why it's like you'd want to be careful with,
Your whole life. They bond you to that person for your whole life.
yeah,
That's the truth.
for the child's whole life. So that's why I
Mhm.
would definitely want to be careful. How do I know if God answered? Alexis, we're glad to come back to your question. How do I know if God answered a prayer about bringing someone to my life, but I am still unsure if it was God sent? Well, to me, Alexis, this really deals with the prayer walk, with God. Prayer walk with God. A few Sabbaths back, I talked about the Sabbath,
Mm.
and how like the Sabbath allows us a time to really connect with God and talk to God and really get clear with God. And I think especially with the dating, especially where you're making such of a critical and important decision, man, that's time to really attune yourself to the voice of God because you do want to get clear. Is God sending this person for me? Is this what he is wanting? You that's when you really want that clear communication with God. So I think that comes down to you're spending time in devotion, you're reading, the power of scripture is I think it attunes you to the voice of God. It attunes you to how he speaks. And the prayer is again, I feel like that attunes you. It gives you the best chance of hearing the voice of God. And it's
Mhm.
it's subtle. It's subtle. It's not necessarily loud. So you really do want to attune to it.
I agree. This is not a question. This is a statement from Clint, and it is perfect. I had to.
Zinger.
It says, I think understanding and managing your own mental health is crucial before engaging in a relationship. Mercy.
Man,
Yes. Amen.
man,
That's all I can say to
that
that.
really does well said, Clint. Well
Very
said,
well
Clint.
said. There was a psychologist, and I can't remember her name, but she was saying that really, and this was from her research or studies that she has read, that we're not really, our chromosomes are not completely formed until we're 24, and so
Mm,
she says that we shouldn't make decisions on who we want to marry until that time. I mean, there's no rule of thumb. I mean, you can't. For those of you who got married before that, or if anybody watches this, it doesn't mean you were wrong. I'm just saying what she
no,
said. But the maturity level, I mean, even comparing my 24-year-old self to me now, there's huge maturity growth to me now. But the 24-year-old was way more mature than the 18, the 19, the 20, the 21,
I don't know how my
22,
wife put up with I don't know how my wife put up with a 25-year-old me. I mean, there is so much growth that took place between 25 and 30, I think, you know. So
That's a
there
huge
is
growing time for most men. Not women, I think, grow earlier, but men definitely in that
mhm,
25 to 30, men really grow.
yeah. So you're gonna do us like that, huh?
They do.
Wait. Should
Um,
someone remain single and not date around until having a strong relationship with God? Should someone remain single and not date around until having a strong relationship with God? Look, I don't, I'll tell you, I can tell you that my experience, especially in that early part of dating, was a whirlwind. Was
mhm.
a whirlwind. I mean, like we were talking all the time. We lived to be together. It was just like there was no room for God. I'm joking when I say that. I'm joking when I say that. But I just mean it is so important to establish that relationship with God beforehand so that it can endure that now strong, especially if you get with somebody that you're really into. Now there's going to be this strong pull to spend a lot of time with that person,
Right,
even possibly giving them God's time, which you
right,
don't want to do.
right,
So I think it's really important to clarify to yourself how important that relationship is with God, so that that person can be added to it. You that so that that's a great question,
yeah.
but
Again,
I would,
mhm.
and it's along the theme of Clint's
Right,
mentioning, hey man,
right,
get your mental health straight, get your spiritual health straight,
correct.
get
Mhm.
your finances,
Oh yeah.
straight. Like, I mean, position yourself. Like this is if you walk away from nothing else, get this. Position yourself
Hmm.
to be a contribution to that person that
Right.
is the object of your affection.
Hmm.
Position yourself to give.
Hmm.
So I'm always intrigued by people who it's like you don't have a job, you're not feeling very good about yourself at all, and you're like, hey, I need to get with somebody. Huh? You got some work to do.
No, yeah, right,
Nah,
right,
you got some, and it's not even bad work. You get to do that work.
right.
And it's also going to open up options as well. But
Hmm.
put yourself in the position to be a blessing to someone.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. I can say that when I started dating my husband, that was the first relationship that I had as a truly converted person. And for him as well. Were both like the first people we dated when we were truly converted. And that relationship with God is what was like our that's what has sustained us through
That's
the
beautiful.
courting, dating, and definitely through our marriage. Like definitely, definitely, definitely through the marriage. It is God that has sustained us because He just
I was
helps us to grow. So yes, to your question, I believe that now I deal with young people every day, right? So if I told them stay single and don't date around until you have a strong relationship with God, they're just going to laugh me out of the room. I wish they would, but they will learn. They will learn that
they'll learn.
they will learn.
It's their turn at bat.
Right. And so, but I know the majority of our viewers are not as young as the 18, 19, 20 years old that I deal with on a daily basis. And so, so yes, as a mature person trying to find that forever person, definitely just work on your relationship with God now. So when you will be prepared to receive that person that God has for you in your life, and you will be a blessing to them, and hopefully they're doing that now as well, and they will be a blessing to you.
Absolutely. I love Amber's statement. Be the kind of person you would like to marry.
Murder.
And
That's nice.
I would twist it with this. I would twist it with this. Have an idea of what you want, but
Mm,
please then step outside of yourself and figure out what do they value.
mm.
Okay? Not what you value,
Right.
not what you value. What do they value? And try to make sure you're not mistaken in thinking they value something that they don't value,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because that can often happen. We talked about real giving before,
Right.
but Amra's kind of discussing that.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
right.
Another one here. Oh, how do you clearly express that you're not interested in someone without hurting their feelings? I'm all about honesty, but I said it on Sabbath school this week. I said it during. I said you can be honest, in a kind and loving, respectful way. But be true to yourself and be honest and not, I mean, you just have to be honest just that you're not interested. And it's really sad, especially if you kind of like this person as a friend, but they kind of want to cross over the friend zone line. That's always a little bit challenging, but still honesty, as they say, is the best policy, but in a
I
kind,
think
loving way.
I kind of funny because like you see young people today and they break up and they're devastated. There is no greater good could happen to you than to have a relationship end with a person that you do not belong with.
Right? I
Okay?
would,
This
yes.
is this is before having children.
Hmm.
This is before having to have a home together and deal with taxes and addictions and this is before all of that. It is
Right.
a blessing to have a relationship end that you get clear you guys don't belong together. You should be so happy with one another. Like, you know what?
Mhm.
Look, we don't belong together, but let me get out of the way because there's somebody that you do belong with. Okay?
Mhm.
And you should, like you said, Sister Tata, you don't have to be devastating and mean to a person. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to be carnal and insensitive,
Right.
but I think truthfulness is so important.
Mhm.
And I think we have to be honest with ourselves that when it's truth you don't like to hear
And you don't
it.
want to
And
leave them on because it's not nice to lead people on.
we'll say that. We'll say, look, it's important not to lead people on, but you and I both know when you communicate to a person, hey, I'm not interested, they do not necessarily respond with kindness. They don't respond with, thank you for being honest. Then
Right.
they attack you. Well, you did blah, 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 blah. I see it all the time in like shows where we always say, hey, be honest, be honest. And then the person says, I'm not interested. And man, the
Right.
flaring up. It's like I thought we valued honesty though. We don't. Not when it's what we don't want to hear. So
Right.
stop you from being all right. How do you know if a man, woman is really interested in you and not just being nice or friendly?
Hmm.
What do you think of that, sis?
Well, you would throw that question at me. How do you know? I mean, I look, well, as I can only speak as a woman, I can't speak for men, obviously, because I'm not a man, but um, for women, like we just know when a man is interested. Um, their kindness is still kindness, but there's just a little different, uh,
Little extra.
little extra on it, right? And so, yeah, women just know. I don't know how to like verbalize that. We just have this, and I think men know as well. But you
First of
can go
all, there's chemistry. First of all, there's
ahead.
chemistry. You like
Mhm.
chemistry is just in many ways it's unmistakable.
Right,
But the other is, just have a conversation, and this is where spending time together is cool. But like why wouldn't the person want to reveal that they're having feelings? I mean, like,
right.
so how do you know if a man was really interested in you and not just being nice and friendly? I
It
think time will tell.
it does, and I think that goes to also to show that you should also make your intentions known, right? Like to say, "Hey, I'm interested in you," or "This is why I'm spending time with you. I'd like to get to know you better." I mean, just be upfront so that the
Yeah,
other
I
person, they don't have to guess. There shouldn't be really a guessing game.
I have found just from my personal experience, gentlemen, mind you, I married 50% of the people I dated. Because so I'm not that extensive in terms of my dating, but I just found women really respond to clarity, like just
Right.
being clear. So that's just what I've seen, and I've also found I don't think they like murky and confusing. They
Mm.
like step forward and be clear. These are my intentions. Gem Warrioress said, I always pray about someone when they come into my life. I ask God to either allow it or remove them from my life. He
Mhm.
always answers me.
And
That's
he,
powerful,
yes,
Jen.
yeah, that's what he does. The question before that,
Let's
did
go
you
back to that
answer
question.
that? How should women in their 30s and 40s handle dating? I mean, Carolina, basically everything that we've said within this hour um, is how you should handle. I mean, you should have when you're going on a date, have the questions. Um, don't if you're not interested, don't lead them on. If you see red flags, go the other way, obviously.
I wonder if she's alluding to the biological clock thing that like by the time you're hitting 30s, it's like you don't want to be like playing around at this time.
No, you don't. And that's why I said have a lot of questions because you can kind of weed out those who are serious. And if he doesn't make his intentions known, like about how he, what his interests are, what his goal is with this dating slash courting you, if he's not serious about, if you guys actually like each other, take it to the next step, and you're in your 30s and 40s, if you're talking about this biological clock thing, then you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste your time. You only want to deal with people who are at that age. You only want to deal with people who are serious, plus all those
Yeah,
other characteristics that we mentioned. But at that age,
yeah.
you definitely want to try to stay away from, I mean, at any age, you want to stay away from that sexual activity because at sometimes you might feel so like, I don't want to use the word desperate, but just so the clock is clicking so loud that you might feel like, okay, I need to take who's ever out there, but you never want to settle. You never want
Don't
to
do
settle.
that. I'll give you guys this illustration because the sexual component is so important. Imagine if, for example, let's say Facebook and let's say Amazon were going to merge. Imagine if they were going to merge. And Mark walks into the room, and maybe one of the women executives from Amazon said, Mark, I'd like to sleep with you. What do you think Mark would say?
Well, Mark is married, so I hope Mark says no.
Yeah, Mark would say, absolutely, I don't want to
Right,
marry
right.
you. You need to leave the room. And if she said, why? Besides the fact that he's married, why would it be a bad idea to sleep with this executive from Amazon when their trillion-dollar companies are about to merge? Why is that?
Because they're I don't know exactly where you're going with it, but why would it be bad for because they're two different companies and they have like two different their goals are different, or I don't know.
It's a multi-billion-dollar merger, and they need to
To
keep
be
clear
thinking,
thinking.
clear thinking, right? You don't want to bring that type of money together if you're okay. I got you. I got you now.
Now here's a question.
Hmm.
The man in the relationship, how much is he worth? Priceless.
Yes, right.
The
Same exact
woman in the relationship, how much is she worth?
priceless.
Priceless. So when we're talking about bringing together two people, we're talking about bringing together two priceless entities.
Gotcha.
How important is clarity of
Yes.
thinking,
And yes,
especially in the 30s and the 40s when time is becoming so pressing?
you don't want sex to cloud your brain, simply put.
They would never do. They'd be like, "You're crazy. We can't. No, get her
Right,
out of the room. That's like
right,
that's nuts.
right.
No."
No, I hear you. I just put this up here because we have Samuel who's watching live from Ghana. So, well, I know we're at the very end, we're basically over, but I just want to say a special welcome all the way from actually from Ghana. Well, okay, Samuel, put a one in the chat because my name is from Ghana. My whole life I thought it was
Wow.
Nigerian, but it's from Ghana. So, does Atonte sound like a name from Ghana? Put a one in the chat, Samuel. I'm just
What does it mean? What does it mean, sis?
It means that God made everything beautiful.
Ooh, nice.
Oh, one! Yay, Samuel! It is. No, I have another friend who actually told me he's from Ghana, and he said it was. Do you know? Okay, now I'm making this all about myself. But Samuel, do you know another Atante? It's such a rare name. So I just or some. In Ghana, I'm sorry, this is Mental Health Mondays, but this will make me happy, make me mentally happy. You could just put yes or no. I know he's a little behind. Okay, he doesn't. He doesn't know another Atonte. But it's kind of like the Ashanti tribe, right? You can say yes to that, and then I'm off of this. So
No, it's all good.
that's what I was told. But yeah, so I feel like there's many languages, but you have okay. But it sounds like it could be from Ghana. Okay, I go with that.
No, that's awesome.
Yes, I don't know. I think everyone should take a vote. Do you feel like we could do another week of this, or what do you think? Because we're definitely out at our 1 hour mark.
Put a 3 in the chat if you think we should have a third week dealing with relationships.
And if we ended up doing a third week, bring some young people. I'm going to push that during church this week. You got to bring some young people if we do another one, because this is good information we've shared. And I wish I would have listened to some Mental Health Mondays about being single and dating when I was young. Okay, there's 3 threes. 4. Okay, there's threes. All right, I think we're going to do a part 3, but this is what you guys have to do. You have to share it. You try to bring a young adult with you next time. You definitely share the first 2 on a young adult's page, and then invite them to watch us live next week.
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell some of my student clients to watch. I've never done that before, but I am. I'm going to send them the link. Yeah, I'm going to send them the links to the first, because a lot of them are in counseling, and yeah, they're dealing with anxiety and depression, but they're dealing a lot with relationship issues, a lot. And that's what when we were in college, we were dealing with that too.
Yeah, there were, and maybe I'll even share some principles from that workshop that I talked about. Don't say a word.
Yeah, don't say a word. Don't say a word.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Our numbers were quite high, so I think us doing it again, people are definitely interested. So we look forward to seeing you next week. But remember, you have to bring a young adult with you, but definitely share the first 2 episodes of Mental Health Mondays, the one on singles, with a young adult or just a single person that you know that would benefit from this topic, and then invite them to come with you live next week. So we definitely look forward to seeing you then. Again, thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a very good evening. Thank you, Dr. Whyte, for all your insight. Definitely was a blessing.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks for your help, Amara.
Yes, thank you, Amara. You help us. You help us every week. All right.
Bye-bye.
We will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.